Hi, it's Peter here. I've been testing the Laowa Argus 25mm f/0.95 lens for a little while. I was able to test it a few days, about 2 weeks ago. And a disclaimer, this lens is not mine. It was sent to me from Laowa, and I will be sending it back as soon as the review is finished. And of course, everything that I say are my own opinion, and Laowa did not tell me what to do or what to say on this video, and nor have they seen it beforehand. So everything I say is my own opinion. Now let's talk about the specs first. Of course, when you have a lens that's fastest aperture 0.95, that is something that is really interesting, and that's probably why someone would get this lens. And of course, I will test the image quality later in this video, how the image looks when it's photographed full open with this lens. First that I noticed when I took this lens out of the box, which actually is right there, very beautiful box. The weight of the lens is 570 grams, so it's quite heavy. And it's very well made. So in that sense, I can see the weight. And if you hold your camera properly, it doesn't really matter. But of course, for some, it might be the thing because it is heavy. The angle of view is 46.7, so it's about the same as a 25mm on a Micro Four Thirds camera is. So it is a standard lens and something that I recommend everyone having, a 25mm lens or 20mm lens, which is actually a bit closer to the real standard lens on Micro Four Thirds. Filter size is 62mm, which is very good because Olympus Pro Prime lenses have the same filter thread. So if you have filters, then you don't need any step-up rings or step-down rings, and your existing filters will fit. And here are some more specs. These specs were sent to me from Laowa. And then let's talk about the look and feel, which I think is, of course, something that we all want. We want our gear to look cool, and I know people are buying retro-type lenses and stuff like that because they look cool. And I don't know what that is, because to be honest, it doesn't really matter what the camera looks like. If it's easy to use and can produce some images, that's the most important thing. But to be honest, we want our gear to look nice too. And this lens is very modern looking and really has some really luxury feeling into it. It's not a retro type lens, it's a modern type lens when it comes to the look. This is part of the Argus lineup, which is a bit different from other Laowa lenses, and I like the design of this lens. It's a really beauty, and it came with a really beautiful box, so there's the whole experience is very luxurious, I think. And that's something that is in a way important, even though it's not, because the best thing about lenses, of course, is the image quality and the usability, which I will talk later on this video. And like I said, it is 570 grams and the Mzuigo is 410 grams. There is a difference and you can feel it. Does it matter? Well, it's very subjective. For me, it is a bit heavy, but as I said, when using your camera properly, it doesn't really matter. And then let's talk about the usability. This is a fully manual lens with no electronic contact, so it doesn't transfer the EXIF info about the lens to the camera. So what you need to do is to add it to your lens info settings and turn that particular lens on when you start using it. You know, it's a good thing to have the lens info written into the EXIF so you know which lens was used. Of course, it doesn't tell you what aperture it was used. It's the aperture that you wrote down to the lens info, and I usually write down the fastest so then I know which lens it is. The aperture ring is clickless, which is good for video, but I do not prefer clickless aperture rings when I do photography. The best way to do it is to have them both. So you could turn the click off and on. That would be the best solution. But of course, it's more complicated and might add something to the cost of the lens. But as I said, for photography, clickless aperture ring is not my favorite. The focusing ring is very long, and it doesn't really matter from 3 meters to infinity. It's really short, but then it's a 270-degree turn if you want to go to the closest focusing distance, which is, let me check, that is 25 centimeters. And that's a very long, turning. But of course, if you're doing macro photography, it's slow photography, and it doesn't really matter. But, I use the word macro. This is not a macro lens, but the word close-up is a lot better for this. But it is a very, very long. But if you're using it from 3 meters to infinity, then it's not that long. And then one thing about the usability is that when you making the focus, the field of view changes quite a bit, especially if you go really close. And that might be a bit of a problem if you use this lens in video. But that doesn't really matter if you're doing only photography with this lens. It's not a big deal. This lens has a built-in or attached lens hood which doesn't come off. I like the lens hood that it's there, but to be honest, this is quite useless. It's too short for this focal length. It doesn't really block the light that you might want not to hit the front element. But it looks good, and I probably think it's just there because it looks good. To be honest, on this part, I would rather have a working lens hood than just a lens hood that looks good. And I think that's a bad call. I think it would have been better if it had a bigger lens hood that actually can block some light from hitting the front element. Let's talk about the image quality. Of course, if you buy a lens that has a fastest aperture of 0.95, you want to use it. But how to determine the image quality? Do we do a brick wall test? Yes, we can, and I did. And as you see at full open, of course, it's not that sharp. But if you stop down to, let's say, 2.8, then it's totally okay. But does it really matter in your everyday photography? Because if you're making an image like this, who cares about the sharpness in the corners? It looks totally fine. So we always have to remember that what really matters is the image quality in that use that you are using it for. Otherwise, taking the brick wall test is interesting just to see, but it has nothing to do with real life photography. So don't take too seriously when I showed this brick wall that I took. It's just, well, it's really nonsense, to be honest. This image is straight out of camera. As you see, nothing wrong with the image quality. And usually when you have these so-called third-party lenses, you need to add some contrast to the image, but not on this one that much. This is straight out of camera, can produce really great images. Of course, every image needs some editing. The starting point is a lot better than usually on third-party lenses. And here is the same image after edits. Very good results. This one is also made full open, but it's a bit different thing when you have a lot of bright areas in the image. There is some kind of ghosting, which is not really that good. But when you're stopping down, it's gone. But this always to remember that if you're using ETTR, then you need to underexpose slightly if you're using it full open, because otherwise the highlights will be not that good looking. At full open, depth of field is very shallow. And of course, that's something that you might sometimes need. But on this image, you can see how shallow it is. So it's really critical. You need to nail the focus. Otherwise, it will look a bit unsharp or, out of focus image. And that doesn't look good. So you need to be really careful. And of course, you can use magnify and peaking colors to help you to make the focus. And we always want to know how the bokeh balls looks. And these are very pleasant looking in my eye. I like the way it renders the shallow depth of field or the out of focus area. Because that is quite important for lenses. But like always, if you stop down to f2, f2.8, the image quality will be better. Like always it is. And I used it mainly at 2.8 when I was walking around with the lens. And it can produce really nice images. And like I said before, you don't need to add that much contrast to the image. The out-of-the-box image with this lens is really good. And then you add the normal image editing and you can get really stunning results with this lens. What are my thoughts on this lens? I've enjoyed using Laowa lenses before and I've tested several of them and they are really high quality lenses and I'm really glad that they have joined the Micro Four Thirds alliance. So we will expect most likely more Micro Four lenses from Laowa. At the moment they don't have any autofocus lenses and I have no idea if they'll start to make autofocus lenses. No idea of that. But what I would have wanted on this Argus lens is that it would have had the electronic contact so that the camera can read the EXIF information. Not sure why they left that out. And if you don't have any problems with manual focusing, this could be an option for you. The price tag is $449, so it's not that bad for what it is. I think it's a good value for the money. And here are some more videos about Laowa lenses that I have on my channel. But hey, thanks for watching and bye for now.